Okay, General, you're welcome here. This is his second appearance in a couple of hours downtown at the Chamber's Community Development Roundtable for lunch. And we're all eyes and ears to see what you have to tell us about JBLM.
Thanks, sir. And I thought I hate PowerPoint, but it does it is useful for some things, yep. Darn it. I agree with the State Department. They don't use PowerPoint. I think that's much better. Can anybody, hopefully, yeah, you can see that pretty well. So, any large organization, you have to have a focus. Oftentimes coming in to take charge of what's the vision, what's the focus. I took over about 7 months ago, and actually fairly easy, the easiest of any organization I've ever taken over, because we're the Army's portion of rebalance, of the pivot. So you got national strategy. Very few times in your career is it that crystal clear. And then for me, it was pretty easy because I have 12 years experience in the Pacific, gotten a variety of jobs, everything from, I've done just about every exercise in the Pacific, was the executive assistant XO to the combatant commander, Admiral Fallon at the time. I worked for Admiral Keating, the PACOM commander after him, as his exercise and training guy. So, and then a couple tours in the 25th Infantry Division doing exercises all over the Pacific and working with folks. So it was pretty clear the rebalance for us. The Army has, prevent, shape, and win. And quite honestly, in the past, we have focused mostly on the win portion. That's, to win our nation's wars is our primary mission, of course, and no one wants to go to war, and no one prays for peace harder than a soldier, a sailor, airman, a Marine, Coast Guard, I can guarantee you. But if our nation needs us, we have to be able to go to war. So, of course, that's very complex, and in the past, it's very easy to understand I'm spending this much money to prepare for war, and if that happens, I need to be able to protect our nation. Pretty clear. It wasn't as clear the prevent and shape portion of it. The phase 0, phase 1 that we consider, before there's a conflict, how do you prevent conflict? How do you shape, help shape others so that if there is a conflict, God forbid, we're not there alone. We're there with allies and others, and hopefully the prevent will prevent the conflict from ever happening. And to me, it was always fairly logical, the prevent and shape phase, quite honestly, as a younger officer. But I saw that it was very difficult. I remember one time Admiral Fallon took him 6 months to convince Secretary Rumsfeld, for example, of the value of the USS Mercy hospital ship going to the Pacific every year. Why do we want to spend $1 million doing that? What do we get out of it? And I remember Admiral Fallon saying, well, this is helping prevent and shape that, we're there, we're building relationships, we're providing medical services. People wouldn't have it otherwise, where it's a goodwill mission, but it's much more than goodwill. It's trying to convert the ugly American, that we're there just to show we're trying to help and prevent and shape. So I'll talk just a little bit more about that. So that is our main focus as a rebalance, because the U.S. Army Pacific has been in the Pacific through this whole last 12 years. Now, a lot of their forces have been pulled, like when I was in the 25th, oriented to the Pacific, but in Iraq. Other units oriented to the Pacific, but in Afghanistan. We had to do that because, the numbers required, and still had folks, deploying for a year, home for a year, deploying for a year, very high op tempo. So we haven't been able to focus as much as we wanted. First Corps was in all the war plans in the Pacific, the major player for Pacific Command, working for the Pacific Command commander, the only corps. There's 3 corps, and there's 4, but one's going away, and it's in Afghanistan now, and as soon as it's done, it's gone. So there's 3 other corps in the U.S. Army. We're the only one that's assigned to a combatant commander, and we're assigned to the Pacific Command commander. But the orientation last year, the Corps was in Afghanistan, commanding about 120,000. 2 years before that, we were in Iraq, commanding about 140,000. So not the focus on the Pacific, that they didn't have the luxury to do that because of the need for, over the last 12 years, the Iraq and Afghanistan conflict. So we now have that ability to focus on the rebalance, and that's the big change for the Army.